Hi and welcome to The Practice Gap, the podcast for closing the gap between the practice you have and the one that you want. I'm Elizabeth, a chiropractor, a business owner, coach and entrepreneur, on a mission to help you move from frustration and overwhelm to clarity, focus and joy in practice. 3, 2, 1, yeah! Today's guest in the studio is a coach. The reason I have invited her here today is because on the earlier podcast, it has been a lot of talk. You have to start with yourself first if you're going to help others. So the reason I invited her today is that we are going to get some tips on where to start when working on ourselves. So today's guest is Inger Beate Botheim. She is Norwegian, and could you start by telling the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Elizabeth. I've been kind of nervous to come here today, so this is my debut as a podcast guest. So thank you for helping me with that. So I'm a 51-year-old woman living in Oslo. I'm a mother of 3, and that's also how I got to know you, because you helped me when I was pregnant with my twins. Thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. My favorite thing to do.
Yes. Lucky for me. So I work with leaders, with leadership development. I work with individual leaders and teams. And I came to this work after several years of being a leader myself. And I was more interested in the people than all the other stuff you have to do as a leader. And I also was a consultant for some years. And then 6 or 7 years ago, me and a colleague decided to follow our dream to with time. We had this dream that we would work in the way we felt was natural for us, because we were doing a lot of personal inner development work. And we thought that maybe this is also something for the leaders out there. A lot of the leadership training that we saw was more technical stuff. Like
what?
How to run my meetings better, how to delegate more efficiently, how to hire the right people. It's often what we call technical leader stuff. It's super important to do, but we are strong believers that the inner game runs the outer game. Mm-hmm. And we knew that for ourselves, to really find new ways to work or live, we needed to go inside instead of looking for everything outside of us. So
to be a good leader, then you have to start with yourself, and then before you do all the how to.
Yeah, exactly.
What makes a good leader?
That's
so that was a big question.
Yes, that's such a big question. The first thing that comes to mind is, I don't know, there's so many good leaders out there. I think what I like to see in a leader is someone that I believe are just themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's...
So authenticity?
Yeah, authenticity. And that's very part of the word the last few years. Like, you should lead with integrity and be authentic. And I think a lot of leaders try to do that, but also from a more technical point of view. So for me, a good leader is a person that I really just I believe in, are themselves, show what they're passionate about, also show what they're not so good at to do, the vulnerability part, to be able to be open. I think I really value that in the leader. That's open and transparent about their leadership journey, because of course I work most with leaders that are on some kind of inner journey. Yeah.
And I think as a chiropractor, or as you are self-employed, and some of my colleagues, they run their own clinics, and some they have people working for them, where you are a leader in a kind of weird relationship where you're self-employed, so you don't really want somebody to lead you, but you actually want a leader for the clinic. So it's a very strange arrangement. But not to go into depth to that right now, but when you are self-employed, you are owner. And how can I become a better leader of myself?
That's a really good question. And I think that's actually the starting point. You asked me earlier where to start, and I think that is the starting point. If you're self-employed, but for every leader, they are first leading themselves. This is what I talked about with the inner game runs the outer game. Brené Brown, we talked about her, the American scientist. She researched shame and vulnerability. That's her field of research. And she says that who you are is how you lead. So I think that's what I'm always curious about. Still curious about myself, but also in every encounter and every meeting with leaders that I have, to try to get curious about who are you.
So if I'm a leader of a small clinic and I come to you and says, who am I? No, that, I wouldn't ask that. I would say, how can I, or maybe it's better, okay. Nobody listens to me. What can I do to lead this gang of fun, crazy people?
Yeah, and we're laughing, and what you're saying is actually not that uncommon, because often people who are hiring a coach or a leader coach or team coach, there is things not working in their leadership. That's very human and very common to blame it on the other people.
Yeah, so it's everyone else's fault.
Yeah, so the thing that you won't have when you go to a coach is to coach the ghost, like we say. It will not work if you're working with a coach to talk about everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's the
that kind of sucks. It's so much easier just to blame everyone else.
Yeah. So if you don't want to talk about yourself and what you're doing and not doing, don't go to a coach.
Okay,
go to somebody else.
Yeah.
So we would start there to get curious about who are you, and that's the funny thing when we grow up, because we are telling ourselves a lot of stories about who am I. That's what lies in Brené Brown's quote. Who you are is how you lead. So who are you? We are telling ourselves stories to fit in. I think I'm this person, or somebody told me that I need to be this person to fit in, or I feel safe if I'm just this version of myself and not the other version of myself.
So how many versions of yours? I mean, sometimes you're one version of yourself at work, and among some of your friends you have a completely different role. You're a different person, and by yourself you might be. Like, how many versions of Earth do you have?
At ends, you use the word role, and I think that's key. We play a lot of different roles in our lives as human, and we have different commitments, to family, to kids, partners, colleagues, friends. So we have many different roles.
Is that okay, or should we be the same one person?
No. I think that's completely okay. It's natural, and maybe it's also an advantage. You can play out different roles, and I think we all know that we enjoy some roles in our lives more than others.
I mean, it's definitely fun. Some roles are much more fun.
Yes. Yeah, I get curious. Which roles do you think is most fun? Yeah. Come on, you're with the coach now, so you can tell me.
Okay. Well, it's much fun being the... No, let's not go there. Let's not go there. So let's keep into that.
Yeah, okay. After this episode, I can stay. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm the leader. I'm coming to you. I'm a little frustrated because no one's listening to me, and it's everybody else's fault. And I may understand that it has something to do with me. Where do you start working when you work with me?
Yeah. So to get to know each other, that's the main job of the coach in the first meeting, to build trust and build a relationship when you feel safe and you can up. And that's actually the same as being a leader. So I think that's a very important job for the leaders. So we start there. I listen. So I trained myself to listen really good, because I'm more of a talker than a listener, and I really, really practice that. And now I enjoy so much, because when you start to really listen to a person, you can hear a lot of the stories. and a lot of the roles that they have played in their lives. And I think that's it's such a privilege to be able to sit with a leader in this room and just start to listen and hear, who are you? And the thing is that when often leaders, I don't work with that many leaders that are like 25. You know, they've been working for quite a bit. And I think many leaders that works with the coach have a sense that something is not working. Like you could be blaming other people, but you are kind of curious, and how can I make different choices? And I think that's the key part. When you get curious about yourself and all the stories you tell, you can also get curious about, so is there stories or ideas of myself that I hold on to, that I'm ready to let go of? I think that's so where you're heading.
So it starts with a curiosity. So like really everything in your practice, it starts to be curious. But here it's about curious of yourself and how you can just become a better human being.
Yeah,
or just leader.
And whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I think we human beings, we have a tendency to have many strategies and things that we do more or less automatically. We are not even aware of all the roles we play in our lives, or all the things that we do, like a second nature to us. We can't necessarily see them before we've done it. And I think the curiosity working with the leader is to have the leader be curious about, where are the places where something happens to me, like some kind of stimulus, if that's a comment from a colleague or something you have to, somebody demands something of you. You have a stimulus around you, and we have a lot of them during the day, and you automatically just react. And I think what we want to do with this curiosity is to try to have the leader see all the stimulus, and use the curiosity to make a little space between the stimulus
and the response.
Yes. So I think that's the beauty of it, because it's not something you do that is wrong, or you should be this kind of leader. Like I said, I kind of no idea what makes a good leader, but it's just to break the habit of having stimulus and react like instantly to things. I think we have the area that when we do that, we kind of have the feeling that I should have done something else. You can go like looping in the afternoon or evening. I shouldn't do that, or you can feel like, I'm so ashamed. I feel guilt. I did this. You have all those negative self-talk, and that's often because we have just had this automatic reaction to stimulus instead of things happening to us.
So the instant reaction will create this suffering afterwards.
Yes, I believe so. And you know, this stimulus and response, I know that you know this quote from Viktor Frankl, this psychotherapist that survived the death camps of Auschwitz. He wrote a beautiful book that's called The Man's Search for Meaning. And this quote is kind of from that book, or at least he said it, is that between stimulus and response there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom to make choices. And if you have the freedom to make choices, that's where you can grow, to do different stuff. And I think that's all our work with leaders are in that space. How to make them aware, how to make them conscious about all the stories they tell themselves, all the roles they play, everything they think they need to do to be a good leader. And how to kind of stop in it, find the space. And if you find the space, you have time to reflect on, is this how I want to respond if I get feedback that's not positive from my colleagues? You need the space to be able to choose differently.
So if I'm hearing you right, then if I come to you first, then you will work on me so I see the space. Yeah. Or I see what are the stimulus that triggers me just to have the reaction that I have. And in those situations, to pause and make different choices, or look at my choices. If I do this is going to cause this, this is going to cause this, like just to evaluate what's going to happen next.
that's a very good summary of a coaching process. And it can seems like, of course, it's not like something will happen to you in a meeting and you say, let me have 10 minutes and I will think about my choices. The space when you're working with a coach is that you train your muscles in knowing what's happening.
And to maybe recognize the feelings, what's going on.
Yeah. And I think when you say that, you're pointing to your heart. And I think that's to be aware. I think that's the first thing we are getting curious about when you work with a coach. Your feelings. And she researched this, and she says that usually people can just name 3 feelings.
Now I'm curious. What are those 3 feelings?
And a lot of researchers have said that, 2, 3, 4, 5 feelings, and that's the common feelings: sad, angry, happy. Those feelings most people know. So she made a whole book. It's a beautiful book called The Atlas of the Heart, where she researched and found names for all the feelings that we have as human beings, to be more literate, to know, okay, am I actually angry? Or might I be sad? Or do I feel shame? So I'm acting angry, So that's an extremely interesting world to dive into with leaders, to get them curious about, so what do I actually feel? What does my body tell me? Because you were pointing to your heart, and the feelings live in the body. So try to get them curious about what's really happening under here. We know that you need to go down to go up. And that means you need to go down into your reactive sides. Because we all have this reactive tendency that we snap very fast, if that is with our kids or partners or colleagues or whatever. You need to go down into the reactive side to find out what's there. What are you reactive? You've done something that got you so far. And I guess people you work with, all the clinic leaders, they're highly competent people, right? Super competent. They have been many, many years to higher education, worked for many years. And that competence is often an outer competence. So what we get them curious is to go inside and go more into the inner game. Yeah, to find...
I mean, the outer game is so easy because then you get the certificate. You're like, oh, you're doing this, you follow all the procedures.
Yes.
But you never actually ever learn how to work on your inside. That doesn't really have a grade. It's kind of hard to be graded on that.
Yeah, that's really good point. And I think especially when we grew up, like in school and in university, there were no curriculum around this, maybe except if you went into psychology or those kind of, So we don't learn that. And I think also like in the Western society, the rational side of human behavior and human beings, that's what's been valuable. You should be rational, you should not listen to your feelings when you take decisions, you should do everything that we say and hold true for people and leaders. That's rational. And that's like we believe that the brain is rational. I think the researcher today would say that the brain isn't rational, right? Because it's made around fear. Fear is not very rational. It's like hugely exaggerates what's going on in your life and looking for all the dark
Actually,
stuff.
I just remembered one of my favorite book titles. It was written by one of our colleagues. It was called Dr. Fred Barge. The title is Life Without Fear.
Oh!
It's probably written in the 60s or something. I haven't read it for many years, but I see the front of that. And I think it's the most wonderful
is that
title.
a how-to book?
I don't even remember.
No.
But just like living in like just life without fear.
Yeah.
And that's that's kind of what we aim for. I mean, if we manage that, I mean, there's so much fear in everything.
Yeah.
Fear about the economy, fear about war, fear, and I just feel like everything is just feeding our feeling of fear.
Definitely, especially in the times that we live in now. Like you say, when we have war closer than I guess we ever experienced. So there's a lot of fear going on. And that's a hard thing about being a human being, because the brain, the main task of a big part of your brain is just to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And the fear center in your brain has that task just to keep you alive. It doesn't matter if you flourish or if you find something new to do after your midlife crisis, right? It's just about you surviving.
So we should then, in a sense, should be a little happy about the fear. I think that it's a good thing. It's like, it's the body is trying to keep me alive.
Yes, it's definitely a good thing, and make sure that you don't get hit by a car when you cross the road, right? Yeah. The thing about fear is that it's like we talked. It's not very rational because it just tries to detect everything that possibly can go wrong because it's too.
And some I'm really good at that.
Yes, you are. So you're normal, at least in that sense. You're normal. Yeah.
So if you should start by giving some concrete advice to our listeners, if they're sitting there and like, okay, I am ready to become a better leader or a better leader of myself, and they don't have a coach, and where should this, like, what's a good starting point? What everyone just can do if they start to, where should you start?
That's a really good question, because you can...
Or what are some starting points?
Yeah, because there's many ways to start, and I think the first thing is to get curious about where you are. Right? What's the story I'm telling myself? And like with the leaders, we often ask, like you asked me, we ask leaders, so what do you think is a good leader? Right? So journal, write out, if you have some time for yourself, to try to see what do I think a good leader is? And what do I want more of in my life? If that's a leader, or you say like you lead yourself. Because often we have longings that we are not aware of. Not until somebody asks us.
Could you elaborate on that? Could you give me an example?
So I will ask you. So what do you dream about? What do you long for? What do you want more for?
More freedom, more... what else? Freedom, but also more security and more fun.
Yeah. And what else?
More time.
Yeah. What do you fear? What's the worst thing that you could have?
Oh, where to start now? Illness, to not be able to, and of course being alone, having no friends, not having a job to go to, not being part of the society, not being unable to connect with other people, like fear of like. I mean, I'm talking more like the deep thing, the fear of being left behind and not being part of my to I think that's like basically to be to alone and unhappy and broke without having any meaning in my life. That's a pretty shitty. That's
Then you should go to a coach. Thank you for being so honest. And I think this, just to get this insight, because you could think that everybody knows what they're longing for, dreaming of, and what they fear about. But what I see when I work with leaders, that they have never had the time or made the time to even think about that. We know often strategies, goals for the clinics, how many patients, blah, 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 how much we earned last year. We know that, like more harder stuff and the numbers, but what we really dream of and long for. And that's often where we start with leaders, to get curious and conscious about, what am I dreaming of? And what would that give me? How would that feel? And where does my fear live, right? It's not rational, but it's still there. It's like when you look inside, you can actually see more clear also outside in your life, right? So that's where we start, and I think that's also good for like self-reflection practices. Just to write down and to see where am I.
So listeners can get the journal and then write down what do you want more of in life, and what are your biggest fears. Yeah. Anything else you should write down in that book?
Oh, it could be a big book with blank pages.
But that's a good starting point.
I think that's a really good starting point, and I think it's always good to take your time to be conscious and aware and reflect before you start doing. Because we are human beings and not human doings.
So be, do, have.
Right. And when you have the time to reflect, of course, then if you want to have change, you need to practice something new, right? You won't have change if you don't do or practice something new. So of course, when you have that, when you feel, this is something I would have more of or less of, let's see if there are small things you can start to do.
So then find to see if I want more freedom, what does that mean to me? And then what can I do in my life now to get more freedom or and then maybe help, get some help outside or just focus on, I don't know. Yeah, well.
No, it could be a lot of things that you could do, but I think when you get clear, and I trust that when people get clear and more conscious, they know that there's something they can do. It doesn't mean that you will have, just because you're writing in your journal, you will have a totally full life freedom. But there could be small stuff, because that's the thing about fear. The fear isn't that rational. It's often things that are holding us back that aren't just based on facts. It's a lot of feelings there. So if freedom is your goal, is there some time during the week that you can do something that makes you feel that you are more free, right? So it's just to get started on that journey.
And I think also another interesting thing that I found, that I think that I want something, and then I go in to see what that is, and it is just a symptom of something completely different. So then it's like one thing, your starting point is one thing, and then you realize it hasn't really nothing to do with it. You want something completely different.
I love that you bring that up, and that's why it often helps to talk with somebody or journal. Because when you see what you're writing or hear what you're saying, and somebody repeats it maybe and give it back to you, you can, because you have time to reflect then, and you can see, this isn't really what I want. I want something else. And that's why it really helps to have the time. And I think that's back to the Viktor Frankl quote. If you have time between stimulus and every reaction and response you have in your life, you have that time to notice what are really, because a lot of things that we think
we don't want.
No, and
because we don't want all the things that comes along with the things that we want.
No, that's true. And it's society and everybody else that thinks that you want to be.
And we always think we want the same as the neighbors, or keeping up with the Joneses. And that's most likely it will not bring you any kind of happiness at all.
No, I don't think so. And I think also to be able to have time to see, is it I that want, do I want this for my life, or is this how I think that leaders should be? For example, this is how it is to run a clinic. I should be like tough or clear or decisive or whatever they think a leader should be. That's not necessarily what I want or what I long for in my life.
Yeah. So. Okay, so if we're going to sum up a little bit here, being a leader and being a self-leader, self-employed, it's kind of the same thing. It goes in a way. Yeah. And you have to, like chiropractor, is an inside-out thing. Yeah. We work with the body from the inside out.
Yes, you do.
Being a good self-leader or leader is also going deep down in yourself before you can have any kind of better impact on other people.
Yeah.
And then start to journal. See what you want more of in your life, and see what your fears are, and then start exploring that and see where you end up. Yeah. And I would say get a coach, or at least talk with someone. That's a good step, and have fun in the process.
Oh yeah, you should definitely have fun and ease. Fun and ease. Yeah, that would be good to bring along with this kind of journey.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would add?
I think you summed it up beautifully, and what comes to mind when you're talking, it's the leadership development journey. It's make it personal. Yeah. Because like you say, you have to start with yourself. It's the inner game runs the outer game, so just make it personal and
not be so scared of being yourself and open, and most of the people are pretty nice to people who are
definitely
themselves.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to have had you here. I'm sure you will be back with some more interesting topics in the course of the next time out there.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.